You weren't supposed to see this coming. Nobody was. Not Washington. Not Brussels. Not even Amsterdam itself. But here we are. The Netherlands, one of America's closest allies, just made a move that could unravel the global semiconductor industry. And it's not backing down. One move. That's all it took to throw a wrench into America's tech war. And the fallout? That's what nobody's ready for. The Netherlands just defied U.S. pressure in a move that could shake global semiconductor supply chains. ASML, the Dutch tech giant controlling 90% of the global lithography market, was expected to fully comply with Washington's semiconductor export bans against China. Instead, Reuters reports that ASML continues shipping deep ultraviolet DUV machines, critical for chip production, to Chinese firms despite Washington's insistence. This decision undermines U.S. efforts to cripple China's semiconductor capabilities and raises serious questions. Is the Netherlands carving its own path, or is this economic brinkmanship? Former ASML CEO Peter Wennink previously warned that cutting China off entirely would only accelerate Beijing's domestic chip-making capabilities. And he may be right. China's Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, SMIC, recently produced a 7-nanometer chip despite U.S. restrictions. A feat. The Wall Street Journal described as a wake-up call for Western tech dominance. If ASML continues exporting to China, is it prolonging its own market dominance or ensuring its own irrelevance? Forget oil, rare earth metals, or AI. ASML's extreme ultraviolet EUV machines are the single most valuable technology in the global semiconductor war. Each machine costs over $380 million and is required to manufacture the most advanced chips. Without them, China is stuck generations behind the U.S., Taiwan, and South Korea. That's why the Biden administration, through the CHIPS Act, pressured the Dutch government to block ASML from selling EUV machines to China entirely. But here's where things get complicated. ASML still dominates the market for older but still critical deep ultraviolet DUV lithography machines. The U.S. wants those blocked too, but the Netherlands is resisting. Financially, the numbers don't lie. China accounted for 46% of ASML's total sales in 2023. Bringing in over $7 billion. Cutting off China could slash ASML's revenue and hand its monopoly power to Beijing-backed alternatives. If ASML plays along with Washington now, does it risk destroying its own future? At first glance, the Netherlands' decision to keep selling DUV machines to China might seem like defiance, but there's another layer: economic survival. Dutch officials aren't just weighing diplomatic pressure from the U.S. and China, they're protecting ASML's role as a global tech leader. The Dutch government heavily subsidizes ASML and allowing Washington to dictate its trade policy risks, making the Netherlands an economic hostage to U.S. interests. But there's another problem: retaliation. Beijing has already hinted at blacklisting ASML if export restrictions tighten further. According to Nikkei Asia, China is stockpiling ASML machines, ramping up domestic production of alternative lithography technology, and investing $143 billion into its own semiconductor sector. The Dutch government must ask itself, if it caves to U.S. pressure now, will it still have a market in 5 years? Washington's strategy hinges on one assumption. Without ASML, China can't build cutting-edge chips, but that assumption is already being tested. According to a recent report by the Semiconductor Industry Association, China produced 70% more advanced chips in 2023 than the previous year, despite heavy sanctions. The Netherlands' refusal to fully comply with Washington's demands could accelerate China's ability to close the technological gap. Intel, Nvidia, and Qualcomm, some of the U.S.'s biggest chip makers, are watching closely. Restrictions on China haven't stopped demand. They've just shifted supply chains. Bloomberg reports that while the U.S. banned chip sales to Huawei, Chinese companies have simply found workarounds through subsidiaries and third parties. If ASML keeps selling DUV machines, Is Washington actually helping China become independent faster? Each time the U.S. tightens semiconductor restrictions, Beijing responds with massive investments in self-sufficiency. Huawei's Mate 60 Pro, which features an advanced 7nm processor, shocked the industry because it wasn't supposed to be possible under current export bans. Now, China is preparing to scale even further. According to Caixin Global, China's state-backed chip fund just injected another $45 billion into SMIC and Yangtze memory technologies, YMTC. Dutch semiconductor analyst Bert van der Wielen notes that the longer ASML keeps selling to China, the faster China's domestic industry will evolve. If the Netherlands is keeping ASML's doors open for short-term profits, is it actually enabling China to develop the very technology that will eventually replace ASML? The European Union has struggled to maintain unity in trade policy, and the Netherlands' latest move just widened the cracks. France and Germany have publicly supported Washington's stance on restricting semiconductor sales to China, but behind closed doors, many European leaders are frustrated. Why? Because U.S. companies like Intel and AMD still receive exemptions to do business with Chinese firms. EU policymakers are asking a crucial question. If America protects its own economic interests first, why should Europe blindly follow suit? The Financial Times reports that European chip makers, including ST Microelectronics and Infineon, are quietly lobbying against full-scale bans. If the Netherlands' resistance gains traction, could it inspire a broader European rebellion against U.S. trade policy? And if that happens, the bigger question isn't just about ASML. It's about whether the West itself is breaking apart over economic self-interest. China currently controls over 77% of global battery production, but its biggest vulnerability remains high-performance semiconductors essential for EVs. Dutch company ASML holds the exclusive capability to produce extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, the key to manufacturing the most advanced automotive chips. The U.S. imposed strict restrictions to prevent China from accessing this technology, but with ASML still shipping deep ultraviolet machines, albeit at a reduced volume, Chinese firms like SMIC and Yangtze Memory Technologies have accelerated domestic alternatives. According to Bloomberg, China's EV sector is now the world's fastest growing, with domestic EV sales projected to exceed 10 million units in 2024. Putting pressure on Tesla, Volkswagen, and General Motors. If China successfully closes the chip gap, it could dominate not just battery production but the entire EV supply chain, forcing Western automakers into long-term reliance on Chinese technology. Washington expected full compliance from its allies. Yet ASML's continued shipments to China, combined with Beijing's aggressive push for self-sufficiency, suggests a growing defiance within global trade networks. The U.S. Bureau of Industry and Security estimates that China increased its domestic semiconductor production by 38% in 2023 alone, outpacing predictions. SMIC, once dependent on foreign technology, recently produced a 7nm chip using DUV machines, a development that U.S. officials previously deemed impossible under current restrictions. ASML's decision to maintain sales of older generation machines, even under stricter export rules, has emboldened South Korea and Japan, who now face pressure from domestic firms urging them to loosen chip export policies to avoid losing market share to Chinese alternatives. Nikkei Asia reports that South Korea's chip exports to China surged by 41% in early 2024, signaling that a global semiconductor realignment may already be underway.